My name is Ricky Fugino, and I'm a senior at Warren. The reason I started coming to Emmanuel was because originally, the original church I went to disbanded, and so we had to find a new church to go to. And we stumbled upon Emmanuel through a friend from school, and so I was just kind of put here going through the motions that we were going through back then. It wasn't fulfilling because back then it was a really hard time with a lot of transition going on, and it was hard to adjust to the church I was at before. So then coming in with more transition, having to go through a new church again, it was really hard, and like being really introverted and shy. I didn't really care about youth group or want to be there, so I was just focused on leaving and not really getting much out of the message or the lecture at that time. Youth group wasn't very fulfilling because it was a new environment and I didn't want to be there. It wasn't where I wanted to be. It was where I was put and where people wanted me to be, but it wasn't what my heart desired.
I love the authenticity of what Ricky just said, because he's not the only person in this room that might feel that way, that might feel like this is the thing you're supposed to do, this church thing. And it would be easy to come week after week for year after year and never really think through or come to the place where you really understand, what is this all about? Really all about? What difference is this supposed to make in our lives? Which then just kind of leads into the question of, what difference are you supposed to make in your life, in your context, in your world, in the place that God seems to have put you today? That's the question that we're going to wrestle with for the next month together as we start this new series called The Reason for You. And today we're going to start with the reason for you here. Why show up here, and what point does this have in your life? And I want to start by talking about what most people will do for most of their lives, and that is pursue happiness. Have you noticed that? Most people see happiness as the end game of life. It's the most important value. It's the thing that we're all striving for, isn't it? It's the great pursuit of our lives. And we do that, I think, in one of two ways, if not both ways. And the first is what I'll call expensively. We pursue happiness expensively. This is why we buy things that we don't need. This is why we sleep with people that we don't love. This is why we work so hard to please or impress or gain the approval of people that we don't like. It costs us something. But we believe there's some part of us, there's some part in me that feels like I will be happier if I have that thing, if I'm with that person, or that person likes me. It's expensive to pursue happiness. It's also this experiential thing. We do this experientially. Think of it like this. We believe that the next great vacation will give us happiness. The next time we get to sit on the beach, I'll be happy. The next time I get to tour Europe, I will be happy. The next time I get to go to my family cabin up north, I will be happy, right? As long as we get to do those things. This is why some of us work so hard. If I work hard and I earn a lot of money and I climb the ladder at work, then I will be happy. This is why we watch a lot of TV. This is why we eat or drink ourselves sick. Because there's something that we think we're going to get out of that experience, and that something is happiness. But it's made me wonder about this question. Did it work? In your crazy pursuits of happiness, I mean, some of you have been pursuing happiness for decades. And my question for you today is it working? Are all of those expenses and all of those experiences adding up to any greater level of happiness than before you spent it or before you experienced it? What's so weird about happiness, what's so frustrating, if you ask me, is that it is always momentary. You might get to that beach and for a moment you're happy, but then you have to come home. And it's on to the next happy maker, right? For some of us, we've had our conquest with that person that we had our eye on for so long, but then the next day it's on to the next happy maker. It's on to the next job. It's on to the next meal. We do it over and over again. It's this momentary idea that keeps us in perpetual pursuit, which I think then makes the pursuit of happiness the most irritating thing in the whole world. Because I'm never really going to get there. So then I start to wonder, maybe it's a bad pursuit. Maybe it's not the thing that I'm supposed to be going after. Maybe it's not the thing you're supposed to be going after. Maybe the meaning of life isn't happiness. Maybe it falls more in line with what a philosopher from the 1800s named Ralph Waldo Emerson said. I think this is a really interesting concept. He says the purpose of life is not to be happy. It's to be useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate, to have it make some difference that you have lived and lived well. I think he's right. Because we have a whole population right now who says, when you ask them, what do you want to do with your life? Their answer is, I want to make a difference. I want to make the world a better place. I want to change things. I want to be of significance. And it's not even a significance that means I'm really famous. It's just I did something. I accomplished something in my life. And I wonder what it would look like for you and I to start wrestling in our everyday with not the pursuit of happiness, but the pursuit of effectiveness. What does it look like for us to pursue being effective in our relationships and in our jobs and in our neighborhoods and in all the different nooks and crannies that we call our lives? I actually think that the scriptures would agree with Mr. Emerson. I actually think that God would agree with the idea that the reason you are is to change things. The reason you are is to make a difference. And here's why I say that, because I think the reason for you, this is going to be kind of something you're going to hear over and over again for the next 4 weeks. The reason for you, the reason you exist, is to know Jesus and grow to be like him. I know, surprise, surprise, that we say something like that here at Emmanuel Church. But you exist. The whole reason your heart is beating and the reason you were born, however many years ago, was to know Jesus and to grow to be like him. And here's why I say that and think it's so important. Because the more you know Jesus and the more you live like he lived every day of your life, you will be effective. Because Jesus was the most effective person to ever walk on earth. So the more we pursue him, the more we pursue our purpose, our meaning in life. And in the New Testament, Paul comes to this idea over and over again, and he usually does it, what's so cool, right at the beginning of his letters. So if you're not a big book reader, Paul will always give it to you in the first chapter. Because he knows you may not get on to chapter 2. So he'll lay it out right in chapter 1. Hey, here's an important thing for you to know. He did this in his letter to the Christian community in Ephesus. We call it Ephesians. So if you've got your own Bible and you want to jump in and follow along on your phone or whatever, we're going to be in Ephesians chapter 1 today, where Paul kind of lays out, here's the deal. And he does that by explaining 3 separate prayers that he prays for the Christians there. And it's telling for what he sees as the ultimate win for a Christian life. So, Ephesians chapter 1, I want to start in verse 16. He writes, I pray for you constantly, asking God, the glorious Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, to give you spiritual wisdom and insight so that you might grow in your knowledge of God. Now, let's stop there and ask the question, for Paul, in this moment, what is the ultimate win? What is the thing that he's praying for? Now, when I first sat down to start studying this passage, I'll tell you, I thought the ultimate win was that we would have wisdom and insight. That's what Paul wanted for us. But the more I read it over and over again, which, by the way, is a great practice. Read one sentence over and over again, and all of a sudden, you start to notice things that you don't the first time through. The ultimate win is not wisdom and insight. The ultimate win for Paul is that you would know God. The wisdom and the insight that he mentions are a means to that end. So the goal that we're striving for, that we're driving for, that we're bending over backwards to try and get to, is not to become more wise or insightful. It is to know God. Paul would say that's the whole reason you're here, is to know him. I wonder if happiness is more a byproduct of a greater meaning in life than an end meaning in life. Because Paul doesn't say, I pray that you would be happy. He says, I pray that you would know God. Because here's why I think he says that. I think he says that because he understands that to change things, you need to be changed. Effectiveness requires being affected. And when you know God, you are affected. Because here's reality, we're all people. We're all people just like every other person. Have you ever noticed that? There's nothing like innately special about you and I. We're all pretty the same. And if we're all the same, then nothing can change. You need something from outside of the same to change it. This is actually Newton's first law. If you go back to science class, Newton's first law is that an object will remain at rest unless it is compelled to move by an external force. Which means if we're all the same, we will all remain the same because there's nothing imposing a change on us. But what Paul says, and what he gets at more and more through his letter, is he says that when you know God, things change. You become a bird of a different feather, so to speak. And now you're not the same as everybody else. It doesn't mean that you are better than anybody else. It just means that you've been changed. And here's what's interesting. Paul says God gives us wisdom and he gives us insight so that we will know God more deeply. And then what's amazing is he infuses us with that meaning and we become the external force in our context and everything changes. This is why knowing God is so important. It's the starting point of making a difference in the world. Because to make a difference, you have to be different. And when you become different, you can make things different. You got to know God. Otherwise, everything stays the same. You exist to know Jesus and grow to be like him. I love it. I love it when our worldview, the Christian understanding of reality, fits hand in glove with where our culture's at in its desires. If you want to make a difference, I know how to make a difference. It's get to know God more deeply. Because if you get to know the Creator, he can tell you why you were created. And then you can do something about it. But Paul's not done. He's not done praying for those people. He's not done giving us kind of the direction that we're supposed to be headed in our lives. Listen to verse 18. He says, I pray that your hearts will be flooded with light so that you can understand the confident hope he's given to those he has called. Ask yourself again, so what is the ultimate win for Paul? What is the thing he's striving for? Confident hope. He wants you and I to live with hope. This understanding that not only do we want the future to be better, but it's this idea that we believe the future will be better. It's not a could, it's not a maybe, it's not a if we really try hard. It's we believe that God will do what he said he was going to do. And do you know what he said he was going to do? Defeat evil and renew everything. That's what he said he was going to do. So I really believe that the best is yet to come. I'm not afraid of the future. I'm confident in the future because I know God, and that gives me hope about what he says he'll do down the road. Hope, think about this. Hope is the engine in change. We only change when we have a hope that it's better to do so. Have you ever noticed that? The whole reason that any of us get on a diet and start to change our eating habits and our exercise habits is because we have a hope that our lives will be better if we do those things. Hope drives change. And hope changes people. I love what Emily Dickinson wrote. She called hope the thing with feathers. I love that because she talks about hope in terms of a bird and the song that a bird sings. Isn't it great now that the sun's up a little bit earlier, and if you're crazy enough to get up early, you can hear the birds singing again. The song of a bird is a magical thing. They don't know the words to the song that they sing, but they don't need to. There's something in that music that affects us. And sometimes in my life I struggle because I don't necessarily know how to rightly articulate the words of my hope. But maybe I don't need to. And what's so interesting about the bird in Dickinson's poem is that the bird sings even though it's storming. The bird sings even though there's hardship all around it. And the song of the bird warms the hearts of those that hear it. I think she was so spot on. Because hope really does do all of those things. And what's so amazing about our relationship with God, when we get to know him better and he gives us that confident hope, we become carriers of that hope. You and I start to carry that hope around with us, and the bird sings through us. There's this pastor of a little church down the road called Willow Creek. He says all the time that the church is the hope of the world. And we could get all busy trying to parse out, well, Jesus is the hope of the world, but then the church is the body of Jesus, and he's called us to carry this hope to the world. Whether it's storming outside, we have hope. Even though we don't know the words, we have hope. Paul says what you're here for is to carry this hope, to be light in a dark world. See, you and I have purpose. And it's way better, and it's way deeper, and it's way more meaningful than just being happy. It is making a difference, because when you bring hope into a hopeless place, everything changes. Because when the birds start to sing, it means the morning has come and the darkness is over. Verse 19. I also pray. This is his third prayer. So his first prayer is, I pray that you would know God. Second prayer is, I pray that you would have hope as a result of knowing God. Third prayer is that you will understand the incredible greatness of God's power, get this, for us who believe him. He goes on, this is the same mighty power. Try to get your head around this. This is a huge verse. The power that's for us is the same mighty power that raised Christ from the dead and seated him in the place of honor at God's right hand in the heavenly realms. Paul's third prayer, his third win for Christians, is that they would understand the power of God that is for them. I have to admit something to you. I have been a Christian for all of my life. I work at a church. I went to 7 years of Bible college. And most days, I fail to understand the mighty power of God for me and for you. At best, I hold on to it. And I store it up. And I don't do anything with it. And when I don't do anything with it, I'm not being effective, I'm not being useful, and I start to have this creeping sense that I don't have any meaning in this world because I'm just pursuing happiness. I think of it like this. Forgive me, it's a science kind of day for me. I think about potential energy. I learned about this in physics class. Here's what potential energy is. It's the energy that a body possesses by virtue of its position relative to other objects. And what so many Christians do is they store up this potential energy because we have a position relative to God and His power, and we store it up and we sit on it. And we feel good about it. We feel good about this power plant that is our Christian faith. But we never ever connect that power plant to all of the places in our life that require the electricity stored up. We're full of potential energy because we have this sense that God is powerful. What we need to do, that I think ultimately leads to really understanding the purpose and meaning of something, is transfer the potential energy to what's called kinetic energy. And here's what kinetic energy is. It's the energy that a body possesses by virtue of being in motion. So when we get into motion in our Christian faith and we exercise the power of God that's available to us, we carry the hope to the world, we get to know God more deeply in the process of it, we rightly understand our meaning. Let's think about this. Anybody ever been on a roller coaster? We live next to a roller coaster place, so if you've never been on a roller coaster, they open next month, and you and I will go on one together, but because it's a great example of what we're talking about. When the roller coaster sits at the top of the hill, which, side note, is my greatest fear, because even though I'm really tall, I'm terribly afraid of heights. My greatest fear is that we'll get to the top of the hill and they'll say, sorry, it's broken, you have to walk down the see-through steps. Thank you, I'll just sleep here. Let me know when you fix it. But there's a lot of potential energy here. That moment where it pauses, you know how that is? A roller coaster kind of pauses at the crest of the hill. That's potential energy because it has a relative relationship to the ground. And the gravitational pull is going to do something with it once it goes into motion. But the energy is potential at this point. When that roller coaster begins to move down the hill, you experience kinetic energy. Now ask yourself, the first person who ever created a roller coaster did not, why did they create it? Was it to sit at the top of a hill? No, it was to move down the hill at an incredible rate. At such a rate that it might send you upside down a few blocks down the track. And you realize the reason this was made is to move. It's in the movement that you understand its purpose. It's in the movement that you understand its reason for existence. Not in standing still. God's power for you and I is not to stand still and to be happy about it. It's to be moving, to actually make a difference. Even Christian or not, you are onto something if you want to make a difference with your life. Whether you realize this or not, that is God pounding your heart. Because it's why He made you. I want to jump ahead to kind of Paul's conclusion of this whole talk. He says a lot more through the end of chapter 1 and into chapter 2, but chapter 2, verse 10 is a verse that a lot of us have memorized, and I don't know that we always connect it to his prayers at the beginning of chapter 1, but this is what 2:10 says, "For we are God's masterpiece. He has created us anew in Christ Jesus so we can do the good things He planned for us long ago." It's in the doing that we are the masterpiece. It's in the knowing that we are the masterpiece. It's in the hoping that we are the masterpiece. Think about this. When he says that God had something planned for you, that means unequivocally that you have purpose. You have a meaning to your existence. If you were planned, You get that, right? When you plan a meal, you're not doing it just because. It's because there's a purpose for it. It's to feed people that you love. When you plan a vacation, there's purpose automatically assumed in that. We don't think about it, but that's always there. So when God says, I planned you and I planned things for you, it means that we have purpose baked into us whether we believe it or not. And those plans have to do with good things. I want you to do good things. Here's one of the troubling parts about Christianity. We understand, rightly so, that we are not saved by doing anything. You get that, right? We are not made right with God, our relationship with Him. We're not restored to our Creator because we do anything. It's by Jesus alone that we're saved. But sometimes because we believe that, we think that's it. Let's just be happy that we've been saved and we're done. No. You are saved to do something with it, to take that hope and bring it into the places that have no hope. You exist to know Jesus and grow to be like Him. There's all kinds of really great passages in the Bible where it talks about Jesus understanding all of who He is as God and kind of setting that aside to do something with it, to come and become a part of creation, to save people from themselves. This is the model that we say we follow. You exist to know Him and be like Him. And we finally come to the reason why you show up here. Because the church is here to help you realize that and do something with it. Because this church exists to help you know Jesus and grow to be like Him. This church exists to help you discover, understand, and act upon your meaning and purpose in life. We don't get together to just do the church thing. We get together to help people change and then go and change things. Because we believe God's called us to this incredible existence that's bigger than just going on vacation. It's bigger than buying a bigger TV. It's bigger than sleeping with the person that you've been admiring for so long. It's bigger than a great meal. It's bigger than all of that. There's more to your life than that. And our goal is to help you find that. The reason for you is to know Jesus and grow to be like Him. The reason for us is to help you in that way. Because here's what we believe. When we understand the reason for something's existence, we can rightly use it. Ever notice that? The reason you use your vacuum cleaner in the way that you do is because you understand the reason for its existence. You understand that the vacuum cleaner was created to pull the dirt and the dust and the scraps up off of your floor and clean your house. That's why the vacuum cleaner was made. So you use it to do those things. Think about it. If you use things in a way that they weren't created to be used, what is the result? Damage. If you use your vacuum cleaner as a jack stand for your car, there will be damage done to both the vacuum cleaner and the poor soul that's underneath your car. It's just true of anything. When we don't use things the way they were intended to be used, the result is always catastrophe. And so when we ask the question, why is the world so jacked up? It's because we're not being used in the way we were meant to, because we're trying to do it our own way. And instead of pursuing our real meaning in life, we're just busy trying to be happy. Now, somebody might be sitting here and going, okay, I don't want to come to church anymore because you're telling me it's not about being happy. No, remember what I said. Happiness is a byproduct of living in your meaning. So do I think that the more you get to know God and the more you start to live like Him, that you'll be happy? Without a doubt. Because when are things, if things could be happy, when are things the most happy? when they're doing what they were made to do. Have you ever seen Handy Manny? I know you're all too old to watch that show on a regular basis, but if you have a niece, a nephew, a grandkid, or a kid, watch Handy Manny with them. These tools that he carries around in his toolbox, they get so excited when the hammer gets to hammer a nail, he loves it. And when the tape measure gets to measure something, he loves it. Because they're living into their purpose and their meaning in life. And they're getting to make a difference because of it. When you and I begin to live into our meaning in life, which is sometimes simpler than we think, it's just, no, Jesus, grow to be like him, I do believe you'll be happy. All the time? No. Because sometimes life is hard. But do I believe you will experience joy? Yes. Because one of the fruits of God's Spirit in our life is joy. So what happens when we begin to understand the reason for our existence? He can rightly use us. And we find joy in being alive. Because we see that being alive as something bigger than just making it through the day. Something bigger than just getting the next promotion. Something bigger than the next vacation. So what I want to challenge you to do with this, what we've been talking about all morning, is to ask yourself a very simple question. What am I doing? I don't know the last time you took an inventory of your schedule, but it can be very eye-opening when you pause long enough to look at how you are budgeting your time. Most of us are just so busy trying to get through all the time that we don't think about it. Sometimes we're so in it that we don't work on it. And I think we need to take a moment to examine what is it that we are doing. Because what you're doing will say something about what you believe to be your purpose in life. So you might sit down with a journal or a blank document on your computer or just sit and think about it for a minute and list out, these are the things that I am doing with my life. And then ask yourself the next question, what's defining my life? And is it these things? Isn't it interesting how we introduce ourselves all the time? I do it. My name is Josh, and I'm a pastor. We identify ourselves and define ourselves by what we're doing. And if you start to think in terms, if these two things in relationship, you might not like what you're seeing. Because you'll notice it's not in line with what we've been talking about this morning. And if you need one more question to ask yourself, it might be, is what I'm doing making a difference? Is this actually changing anything in my family, in my friendships, in my office, in my small group, in my church? And then you start to wrestle with, okay, God, maybe I've got this wrong. And I need to be reminded of why you made me. The one who made me is the greatest authority on why he made you. And I believe with all my heart the answer that comes back is going to be you exist to know Jesus and grow to be like him. Seek first the kingdom of God, and all this will be added unto you. Here's what that means. First things first. If you want to have joy and you want to have peace and you want to have love and you want to have all of these things that you and I are so hungry for, they're not going to be found in your own pursuit. They're going to be found in you pursuing him, knowing him, being like him. So when it all comes down to it, the reason for you and the reason for church has nothing to do with religion. It's for reason. It's for purpose. It's for meaning. It's for making a difference in this world. It's for us making the kingdom come. right? The Lord's Prayer, you memorize this. You probably memorized this before you ever walked into a church. I don't know how that happens, but everybody and their brother knows the Lord's Prayer. Do you remember what that one part goes like? Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That's your purpose. That's the reason for you. And the whole reason we come together is to help us to discover that at an ongoing, deeper level and to find more and more opportunities where we can live into our purpose. What I love is that Ricky's story doesn't actually end where we ended that video. There's more to it. And in his time, as part of being around here, he's discovered there's more to this and there's more to him. Check this out.
With regard to why I go to church, it's really evolved from a church into a community for me. It's helped me find a sense of belonging, and it's helped me develop my purpose, I guess, because it's really easy to open up and be comfortable when you're surrounded by a safe and comfortable environment with people that engage and people that are really friendly with you. One thing about myself that I've really learned is it's really important to get uncomfortable and step out of your comfort zone, I guess, because as a freshman back then, the then seniors and leaders would engage me and get me open, and so it's really important to kind of pass that on, and now that I'm a senior, to return the favor and just open up and engage other freshmen and new people. Well, the group of friends that I found at Impact and in the community of Emmanuel, it's really changed my life because they're the first, I guess, friend group that I've really connected with on a spiritual and I guess emotional level compared to the friends that I've had at my old churches or at school. They helped me grow, they really sharpened me in my faith, but they also, they confront me, and it's kind of like iron sharpens iron, I guess, where I help him grow, they help me, and we're always there for each other. That's another big thing. One thing that's really helped me grow in my life through Emmanuel is like I said, stepping out, engaging, taking up leadership. That's a big deal for me. My whole life I've always been a follower, kind of behind the lines. But then now, sometimes you just gotta take initiative and step up. And when you go up with a group of friends, it's a lot easier, I guess. And so that's what I've been doing my whole, progressing through my life. So as I progress on without them, I'm gonna remember that and always try to step out and go above and beyond.
There's always more to the story. And there is more to your story as well. We're going to end our time together by worshiping in a couple of ways, by singing another song, but also by giving. And what I want you to understand is even in that story of giving, there's more to the story. There's meaning in that. There's purpose in that. And it's not just to do an offering because that's what it seems to always be about at a church, right? It's about helping people know Jesus and grow to be like him. It's about helping people like Ricky understand there's more to their story. There's meaning to their life. And that when they can live out that purpose, they will experience the things that they're actually wanting most deeply. You see, you and I, when we give, it helps facilitate that happening. I say this all the time. You might not sign up to be a high school leader, but you and I all participate in that environment happening, where stories like what you've just heard pop up every single week. So that's why we give. We give because we believe that it makes a difference in people, and then those people go and make a difference in our world. And that ultimately one day, Jesus will sit down on the throne and all things will be new. Let's pray. God, God, we desperately want to understand deeply who you are. But not just who you are, but who we are in relationship to you. We want so deeply to know you, to be intimate with you. For the truth is, you already know us. So our greatest pursuit in life is to know you. And we want to be like you, and you gave more than we could ever imagine for us. So this is our little step towards giving like you did. And our prayer is that you would help us to use what's given in a way that honors you, that makes you smile. Lord, we know that we don't need to equip you to do anything. So this isn't us making it possible for you to do your thing. This is us just trying to live into our purpose and be like you.